Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I still can't believe what happened at my fiance's daycare last week. I just had to share this story because it's honestly one of those rare moments when karma actually shows up and does its job. My fiance is 22 and absolutely loves working with kids. She started at this daycare about 6 months ago in the baby room, and from day one she's been passionate about her job. The kids adore her, the parents appreciate her, and she gets along with almost everyone there. I say almost because there was this one woman who, for whatever reason, had it out for my fiancé from the moment she walked through the door. This woman, let's just call her the workplace bully, never said anything directly to my fiancé's face. Oh no, she was much more sneaky than that. Instead, she would constantly talk trash behind my fiancé's back to anyone who would listen. She'd make little comments about how my fiancé wasn't handling the babies correctly or how she was too inexperienced to be working there. My fiancé had no idea this was happening until one of her coworkers pulled her aside one day. The coworker gently told her that the workplace bully had been saying some nasty things about her to everyone else at the daycare. When my fiancé asked what kind of things, the coworker explained that the bully had been telling people that my fiancé didn't know how to properly care for the babies and that she only got hired because the director felt sorry for her. The coworker made sure to add that it was all complete nonsense, but thought my fiancé should know what was happening. This really hurt my fiancé's feelings, but she didn't want to cause any drama at her new job. She decided to just keep her head down and continue doing her work as best she could. But her coworker wasn't having it and reported the workplace bully to their boss. After that, something strange happened. The workplace bully actually stopped the trash talking and started being nice. It seemed forced at first, but then one day, she opened up to my fiancé about her marriage problems and how stressed she'd been. My fiancé, being the kind-hearted person she is, felt bad for her and thought they were finally developing some kind of friendly relationship. That lasted for about 3 weeks. The same co-worker who had warned my fiancé before came to her again with news. With a regretful look, the co-worker told my fiancé that the workplace bully was at it again. She explained that the bully had been telling the new hire that my fiancé was incompetent and that they should watch out for her. This time, my fiancé decided enough was enough. Both she and her co-worker went to their boss to report what was happening, and that's when they found out that this wasn't even the workplace bully's biggest problem. Apparently, she had already been in serious trouble for calling out of work multiple times with almost no notice. The most recent time, she had texted the boss only 10 minutes before her shift was supposed to start, leaving them scrambling to find a replacement. And on top of that, this wasn't the first time she created a toxic atmosphere at the daycare. My fiancé's report was the final straw. The boss fired the workplace bully that same day. But here's where it gets really good. With the workplace bully gone, they suddenly needed someone to take over as the full-time teacher for that class. And guess who they offered the position to? My fiancé. It came with better hours and a nice pay bump too. When the workplace bully had to come back to collect her things, my fiancé was already settled into her new role, teaching the class that used to be the workplace bully's domain. According to my fiancé, the woman was visibly annoyed the entire time, pouting and huffing as she packed up her desk. The boss reminded the workplace bully to make sure she collected all her personal items before leaving. The bully responded with attitude, saying she knew how to clean out the desk and complained that she wouldn't have to if she hadn't been fired over nothing. The boss replied that it wasn't nothing, and they both knew that. As the workplace bully was about to leave, my fiancé decided to take the high road. My fiancé approached her and sweetly wished her the best of luck with whatever came next for her. Then, to really kill her with kindness, my fiancé gave her a big, enthusiastic hug. The workplace bully stood there stiffly, clearly not expecting or wanting the gesture. She mumbled something about my fiancé enjoying it while it lasted. My fiancé just cheerfully replied that she absolutely would and told her to take care. Later, my fiance found out that her helpful coworker had actually confronted the workplace bully directly, asking the question we'd all been wondering. When the coworker asked why she disliked my fiance so much, the workplace bully's simple response was that she didn't know, she just didn't like her. That's it. No reason, no explanation, just pure baseless dislike. I'm still baffled by people who can be so needlessly mean to others, especially in a workplace dedicated to caring for children. But I'm incredibly proud of my fiance for handling it all with such grace and professionalism. And I'll admit, I'm also pretty satisfied with how everything turned out. My spouse and I had been saving up for years to take our two children on a proper vacation. We both work long hours at our jobs, me at the local hospital as a nurse, and my spouse at a construction company. Money has always been tight, but we finally had enough for a 2-week trip to the beach. The kids were beyond excited, and honestly, so were we. 2 weeks of sun, sand, and no worries. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. We bought it 5 years ago and turned it into a home. Before leaving for vacation, we made sure everything was secure. We locked all the windows, double-checked the doors, and even asked our neighbor to keep an eye on the place while we were gone. The vacation was everything we hoped for. The kids played in the ocean every day, we ate too much ice cream, and for once, we didn't have to worry about work or bills or anything else. It was perfect. But that feeling didn't last long after we got home. We arrived back at around 10 p.m. The kids were tired from the long drive, and we were all ready to crash in our own beds. As soon as I put the key in the lock, something felt off. The door wasn't locked properly. I figured maybe I hadn't locked it right before we left, though I could have sworn I checked it multiple times. When we stepped inside, more things seemed wrong. There were dirty dishes in the sink that weren't ours, food wrappers on the coffee table, a strange smell in the air, and shoes, adult and children's shoes, that definitely weren't ours, by the front door. I whispered to my spouse that someone had been in our house. My spouse nodded, looking as confused and worried as I felt, and said they would check the back door to see if someone had broken in. I grabbed my phone ready to call the police when I heard it, screaming from upstairs, from my children's bedroom. My heart nearly stopped. My children had run ahead of us upstairs, excited to see their room after being away for 2 weeks. Now they were screaming. I bolted up the stairs with my spouse right behind me. What I saw next still gives me nightmares. There was a woman, I'd later come to think of her as Karen, sitting up in my daughter's bed. 2 children I'd never seen before were next to her, looking startled and confused. My kids stood in the doorway, shocked to find strangers in their room. Karen angrily demanded to know what we were doing in her house and told us to get out. I was shocked and told her this was our house and asked who she was. She claimed she'd been living there for a week and that the house was hers now because we had abandoned it. Before I could respond, she grabbed something from the nightstand. It was an air freshener can. Then she did something so shocking I still can't believe it happened. She sprayed it directly at my children and then flicked a lighter in front of the spray, creating a makeshift flamethrower. My kids screamed as the flames shot toward them. By some miracle, they weren't severely burned, but their hair was singed, and my youngest pajamas had a burn mark. I grabbed my children and pulled them behind me. I shouted at her, asking if she was insane and pointing out that she had just tried to set my kids on fire. She yelled back that my children were trespassing and that she was defending her home. My spouse had already dialed 911. I grabbed my children and we all ran downstairs and out of the house. We weren't going to stay inside with that woman for even one more second. We waited in our car with the doors locked. Karen came to the window screaming that we were the intruders, that we were trying to steal her house. Her children peered fearfully from behind her. She continued yelling that this was her house now and that she had found it empty, so it belonged to her, using the childish finders keepers logic. When the police arrived 5 minutes later, though it felt like hours, she tried to tell them the same story, that she lived there and we were trying to break in. But of course, we had our identification with our address, photos of us in the house, and neighbors who confirmed we were the rightful owners. The police arrested her immediately. It turned out she had been evicted from her apartment the week before and decided our empty house was her new home. She had broken in through a back window we rarely used and had been living there with her 2 children for almost our entire vacation. The children were taken into temporary custody by Child Protective Services while Karen was charged with breaking and entering, property damage, assault, and child endangerment, both for what she did to my kids and for involving her own children in her crimes. My children were traumatized. We all were. We had to replace the beds and bedding. None of us could stand the thought of sleeping on them after strangers had used them. We installed a security system the very next day. It took months of therapy for my kids to feel safe in their own rooms again. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear someone in the house. All because a stranger decided our home was hers for the taking and was willing to hurt children to keep it. I work at a marketing agency downtown. Nothing fancy, just a steady job that pays the bills. I've always been pretty careful about who I hang out with, keeping a small circle of trusted friends. My female friend, I'll call her the accuser, and I had known each other for about 2 years. We met through mutual friends at a house party and occasionally hung out in group settings. We weren't super close but friendly enough. When she texted me saying her parents were away for the weekend and asked if I wanted to come over to watch movies and have a few drinks, I didn't think twice about it. We'd hung out before, always casually, never romantically. I brought some snacks, she ordered pizza, and we watched a couple of bad horror movies while catching up. Around midnight, she showed me to her room. She told me I could sleep in her bed since she didn't have a guest room and claimed the couch downstairs was really uncomfortable. When I offered to take the couch anyway, she insisted it was fine for me to stay in her bed as long as I kept to the side against the wall. She assured me she wasn't worried about the arrangement. I didn't think much of it. We were friends, both adults, and nothing inappropriate happened that night. The next morning I woke up early for work, thanked her for having me over, and left. Completely normal, or so I thought. 2 days later I was getting ready for work when I heard loud knocking at my front door. I was still in my bedroom when my roommate called out to tell me there were police officers asking for me. Before I could process what was happening, 4 police officers were in my bedroom. They told me I was being arrested on suspicion of criminal damage. They wouldn't tell me any details, just handcuffed me and led me through my house while my roommate and his girlfriend watched in shock. They took everything: my phone, wallet, car keys, watch, even my AirPods. The neighbors were out on their porches watching as they put me in the back of a police car. I was mortified, confused, and terrified. One of the police officers told me they would explain everything once we got to the station. When we finally arrived at the police station, I was processed, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. I sat there for nearly 10 hours before anyone came to question me. 10 hours of wondering what criminal damage I could possibly have caused. Did I break something at her house without realizing it? Did I spill something on an expensive piece of furniture? The detective told me that I had been accused of ejaculating on multiple items in the accuser's home. When I expressed my shock and denied this completely, the detective continued by saying that, according to the accuser, I had forcefully invited myself to her home and insisted on sleeping in her bed. I quickly explained that this was completely false, telling him that she had invited me over because her parents were away and she specifically told me to sleep in her bed, never offering an alternative. The detective continued listing the items I had supposedly damaged: pillows, bed sheets, duvet, 2 stuffed toys, a pair of her underwear, and bizarrely, her parents' bed sheets. I was completely stunned. The detective mentioned that these items had been sent to forensics for testing. I encouraged them to test everything, knowing they wouldn't find anything because I hadn't done what she claimed. The questioning went on for hours. They asked about my relationship with the accuser, why I was at her house, if I had romantic feelings for her, if I had touched her personal items. It was humiliating and infuriating. I answered everything truthfully, but I could tell they weren't fully believing me. They eventually released me on bail but kept my phone and watch for investigation. I went home feeling violated, confused, and angry. The next few weeks were hell. The accuser and her best friend seemed determined to destroy my reputation while the investigation was ongoing. They contacted every mutual friend we had, telling them I was a pervert who had done disgusting things in her home. They messaged people I barely knew, even friends of mine they had never met. One night at a pub, one of the accuser's friends shoved me hard against the bar. He threatened me, calling me a sick freak and telling me to stay away from her. My roommate had to pull me away before things escalated. I started receiving threatening messages from strangers. People I'd known for years blocked me or stopped responding to my texts. Even with my insistence that I was innocent and waiting for the forensic results, most people had already made up their minds. I collected everything: screenshots of the messages they were sending about me, voice notes they sent to mutual friends, Snapchats where they were laughing about me being arrested. In one voice note, the accuser's best friend was literally giggling while describing my arrest, saying that she couldn't believe I actually got taken away in handcuffs and that it was too good. The stress took a massive toll on me. I could barely eat or sleep. I started having panic attacks before work. Eventually, I was diagnosed with depression and put on medication. I started seeing a therapist weekly. I stopped going out almost entirely, afraid of running into the accuser or anyone who believed her lies. After 2 months of this nightmare, I finally got a call from the detective. He told me that the forensic results had come back and there was no trace of semen or my DNA on any of the items. He said they were dropping all charges and that I was free to collect my belongings. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by anger. 2 months of hell, a reputation in tatters, mental health destroyed, and she had been lying the entire time. When I went to collect my belongings, I asked the detective what would happen to her now, pointing out that she had filed a false report and ruined my life. The detective explained that would be a separate case and I would need to file a complaint if I wanted to pursue that. When I asked about all the defamation, since she and her friend had told dozens of people I did this, he told me that was a civil matter and I would need to consult with an attorney about it. The system that had been so quick to arrest me, to treat me like a criminal, seemed completely uninterested in holding my false accuser accountable. The next day, I met with an attorney who specialized in defamation cases. After reviewing the evidence I'd collected, the messages, voice notes, and testimonies from friends who had been contacted by the accuser, he was confident we had a strong case. The attorney told me that based on the evidence, this looked premeditated. He pointed out the timing, the specific accusations, and the immediate smear campaign, saying they knew exactly what they were doing. When I asked if we could really win this, he assured me that we had solid evidence of malicious defamation that caused demonstrable harm to my reputation and mental health, and he believed we could win. We filed a civil lawsuit against the accuser and her best friend for defamation. Additionally, my attorney helped me file a formal complaint with the police department requesting an investigation into the false report. The process is ongoing, but for the first time in months, I feel like I'm taking back control. The people who tried to destroy my life need to be held accountable, not just for me, but to prevent them from doing this to someone else. I still have bad days, I'm still on medication and in therapy. Some friendships may never recover, but I'm not hiding anymore and I'm not letting them get away with what they did to me. In 2021, my family and I moved into what we thought was our dream home. It was perfect for my terminally ill father to spend his final years with us. The house had been vacant for a while, and we got it at a good price. Unfortunately, our dream quickly turned into a nightmare because of our next-door neighbor. Let's call her the encroacher. Something seemed off about the property lines. Her yard was unusually large, and the border didn't match our deeds. Being busy with moving and caring for my father, we initially ignored it. That changed when we tried landscaping near what we thought was our property line. The encroacher rushed over and demanded to know what I was doing. She claimed I was on her property. When I explained I was just planting shrubs along our property line, she insisted our property started much farther back. According to our deed, our property extended at least 20 feet further than she claimed. This disputed area included our electricity pole, garage entrance, and septic tank. I tried explaining about our deed, but she wasn't interested. She said she'd lived there for 15 years and the land had always been hers. When I tried reasoning further, she just walked away. This became a pattern. Whenever we tried accessing our septic tank or garage, she'd come out screaming and threatening to call police. My father, already weak from illness, became increasingly stressed by these confrontations. Things reached a breaking point when our septic system needed repairs. The encroacher blocked the workers from accessing it, saying it was her land and she wouldn't allow any work there. As a result, we used a porta potty in our backyard for 4 years because this entitled woman claimed our property was hers. After my father passed away, partly due to this stress, I'd had enough. The county suggested a land survey costing $12,500. Despite the expense, especially after my father's medical bills, we had no choice. The survey confirmed our suspicions. She had indeed taken about 20 feet of our property. When confronted with this evidence, she still didn't care and told me to talk to her lawyer. No lawyer ever contacted us. She was bluffing. I filed a formal complaint and hired my own lawyer. Finally, the court ruled in our favor. The judge ordered her to vacate our property and pay damages. Then the sheriff enforced the court order and she had to move her shed, remove her fence, and face reality. We reclaimed our property, fixed our septic system, and built a proper fence on the exact property line. The court ordered her to pay all our legal fees, survey costs, and damages for the years of inconvenience. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.